Why didn't Spain join World War I? World War I engulfed nearly all of Europe in a devastating conflict, yet one major power remained on the sidelines: Spain. Unlike Belgium, which was drawn into the war against its will, Spain had the freedom to choose its path. But given its strategic location, vast empire, and military history, why did Spain stay out of the war? The answer isn't as simple as neutrality. It was a mix of political divisions, economic opportunities, and a fragile internal situation. And Spain's decision to remain neutral had consequences that lasted far beyond the war itself. The first major reason Spain stayed out was internal instability. The country was deeply divided politically. King Alfonso XIII ruled as a constitutional monarch, but his government was fragile. The country had experienced military defeats in the Spanish-American War, which had shaken national confidence. On top of that, Spain was split between conservatives who sympathized with Germany and liberals who leaned toward Britain and France. The king himself was rumored to favor the Central Powers, while much of the government leaned toward the Allies. But instead of picking a side and risking civil conflict, Spain chose neutrality as the safest option. The second reason was purely economic. While other European nations were bleeding resources, Spain saw an opportunity to profit. As the war dragged on, European countries desperately needed supplies, food, raw materials, and industrial goods. And Spain, sitting on the sidelines, was in the perfect position to sell them. Spanish industries boomed, providing weapons, minerals, and textiles to both sides. The economy thrived, and Spanish companies made a fortune supplying the war effort without firing a single shot. But this golden age came with a dark side. Prices skyrocketed, the working class suffered, and tensions grew between the rich, who were profiting from the war, and the poor, who struggled to afford basic goods. Spain was walking a dangerous tightrope. Another major factor was military reality. Spain's military was nowhere near ready for a global war. The country had suffered humiliating defeats in its colonial wars, particularly in Morocco and against the United States in 1898. The Spanish army was outdated, underfunded, and divided. If Spain joined the war, it risked internal rebellion, naval blockades, and possible invasion outcomes it simply couldn't afford. Despite its neutrality, Spain couldn't avoid the war's consequences. German U-boats sank Spanish ships. Tensions with Britain over trade led to diplomatic crises, and internal unrest grew as the economy became unstable. By the end of the war, Spain's neutrality had left it isolated. It had profited from the war, but at the cost of growing economic inequality and political instability problems that would later erupt into the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. Some historians argue that Spain missed a chance to gain power and influence by staying neutral. Others believe that entering the war would have destroyed the country. What's certain is that Spain's choice shaped its future. It remained neutral again in World War II, avoiding another catastrophic conflict. But the internal instability that neutrality failed to solve would eventually push Spain into decades of dictatorship. So, was staying out of World War I Spain's greatest mistake or its smartest decision? That, in the end, depends on how you look at history.